It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. Niccolo Machiavelli. Most people think being nice gets you ahead. They believe if you're good, good things will happen. This is a lie. The world rewards those who take what they want. It favors those who understand the dark side of human nature. We are not those people. We see the world as it truly is, a game of power. The idea that kindness always wins is a comforting story. It's a story told to keep people in line, to make them easier to control. It's a way of saying, don't cause trouble, just be good and you'll be rewarded. But look around you. Does it seem like the kindest people are always on top? Or are the ones who know how to play the game, the ones who aren't afraid to get their hands dirty? Power comes from understanding how people really work, not how they wish they worked. People are driven by their desires, by their fears, by their need for recognition. Knowing this allows you to move them like pieces on a board. Kindness is just one tool, and it's often the weakest. There are those who believe that darkness corrupts, that seeking power makes you evil. We do not agree. Darkness is simply a tool, like a hammer. It can be used to build or to destroy. It is the wielder who decides. The world isn't fair. Nice guys finish last. To survive, you must understand the darkness and learn to use it. To wield darkness effectively, one must first confront the shadows within oneself. It is a journey of self-discovery, often unpleasant, where we acknowledge the parts of ourselves we prefer to ignore, the envy, the resentment, the petty desires for revenge. These are the raw materials of power. Ignoring them doesn't make them disappear, it merely allows them to control you unconsciously. By bringing them into the light, by understanding their origins and motivations, you gain the ability to harness them, to channel them into calculated action rather than being driven by impulsive reaction. This is not about becoming a monster. It's about becoming aware of the monster that already exists in potential within us all. It's about mastering that potential so it doesn't master you. The psychology of the masses is rooted in predictable patterns. People crave certainty, even when certainty is an illusion. They seek leaders who project confidence, even if that confidence is based on nothing more than bravado. They are susceptible to flattery, eager to believe that they are special, that they possess unique qualities that set them apart. These vulnerabilities are not signs of weakness to be scorned, but levers to be understood and potentially utilized. The skilled strategist does not judge these tendencies. He simply observes them, analyzes them, and anticipates how they will manifest in different situations. He understands that people are far more emotional than rational, and that their decisions are often driven by subconscious desires rather than logical considerations. Fear is a particularly potent motivator. The fear of loss, the fear of humiliation, the fear of death. These are primal instincts that can be exploited to great effect. A skillful manipulator can create a sense of urgency, a feeling that something precious is at stake, thereby compelling people to act against their own best interests. This is not to advocate for the indiscriminate use of fear, but rather to acknowledge its pervasive influence on human behavior. Understanding the fears of others allows you to predict their actions, to anticipate their reactions, and to guide them towards a desired outcome. The key is to be subtle, to avoid overt threats, and to instead cultivate a sense of unease, a feeling that something bad might happen if they don't comply. Conversely, the promise of reward can be equally effective. People are drawn to pleasure, to comfort, to the gratification of their desires. By offering them something they crave, you can gain their cooperation, their loyalty, and their willingness to overlook your own flaws. This could be anything from a promotion to a compliment, a promise of wealth to a simple act of kindness. The specific reward is less important than the perception that it is valuable and attainable. The skilled strategist understands the desires of others and knows how to dangle the appropriate carrots to achieve their objectives. Deception is an inherent part of the game of power. It is the art of creating an illusion, of misdirecting attention, of presenting a false reality. This does not necessarily involve outright lies, although those may sometimes be necessary. More often, it involves carefully selecting the information you reveal, exaggerating certain aspects while downplaying others, and crafting a narrative that supports your desired outcome. The most effective deceptions are those that contain a kernel of truth, making them more believable and harder to detect. The goal is not to fool everyone all the time, but to fool the right people at the right time, to create enough doubt and confusion to achieve your objectives. The ability to control your own emotions is paramount. Anger, fear, and sadness can cloud your judgment, impair your decision-making, and make you vulnerable to manipulation. A true master of power remains calm and detached, even in the face of adversity. He observes the situation objectively, analyzes the available options, and acts with calculated precision. He does not allow his emotions to dictate his actions. Instead, he uses his intellect to guide his behavior. This requires rigorous self-discipline, a constant awareness of your own emotional state, and the ability to suppress impulsive reactions. Furthermore, cultivating an air of mystery can enhance your power. People are drawn to the unknown, to the enigmatic, to those who possess secrets. By revealing only what you want others to know, you create a sense of intrigue, a feeling that there is more to you than meets the eye. This can make you more attractive, more influential, and more difficult to predict. The goal is not to be secretive for the sake of being secretive, but to strategically manage the information you share, to create an aura of power that commands respect and attention. Silence, when used effectively, can be more powerful than words. Finally, understand that power is not an end in itself. It is a tool, a means to an end. The ultimate goal should not be to dominate others, but to achieve your own objectives, to create the life you desire, and to leave your mark on the world. Power without purpose is empty, meaningless, and ultimately self-destructive. The truly powerful are those who understand the responsibility that comes with it, who use their influence wisely, and who strive to create a better future for themselves and for those around them. The darkness is a path, not a destination. Learn from it, use it, and then rise above it. Consider the calculated ascent of a notorious tech CEO known as much for his ruthlessness as his innovation. His strategy, a masterclass in dark psychology, offers a chilling example of how power is seized and maintained in the modern world. He didn't inherit his position. He clawed his way to the top, leaving a trail of discarded alliances and broken promises in his wake. From the outset, he understood that sentimentality had no place in the cutthroat world of Silicon Valley. He viewed his competitors not as colleagues, but as obstacles to be eliminated, weaknesses to be exploited. His ambition was a consuming fire, driving him to surpass every rival, to dominate every market, to build an empire that would bear his name for generations. His methods were rarely subtle. He weaponized information, meticulously gathering data on his rivals, identifying their vulnerabilities, and then leveraging that knowledge to his advantage. He leaked damaging stories to the press, orchestrated smear campaigns, and even used his influence to sabotage their product launches. He was a master of manipulation, able to twist narratives to his benefit, to portray himself as a visionary innovator while simultaneously casting his competitors as outdated and irrelevant. He cultivated a carefully crafted public image, projecting an aura of confidence and invincibility, even when his company was facing internal turmoil. This carefully constructed facade shielded him from scrutiny and allowed him to maintain control over the narrative. He was equally adept at managing his own team. He fostered a culture of fear and competition, constantly pitting employees against each other, rewarding loyalty with lavish bonuses and punishing dissent with swift dismissal. He understood that a divided workforce was a controllable workforce, one less likely to challenge his authority. He demanded absolute obedience, brooking no disagreement, tolerating no challenges to his vision. He surrounded himself with sycophants and yes-men, individuals who would reinforce his beliefs and cater to his ego, ensuring that he remained insulated from dissenting opinions. He instilled a pervasive sense of paranoia, fostering an environment where employees were constantly looking over their shoulders, afraid to speak their minds, fearful of incurring his wrath. This culture of fear ensured compliance and maximized productivity, driving his company to unprecedented levels of success. However, his greatest strength was his ability to anticipate the moves of his opponents. He studied their strategies, analyzed their weaknesses, and predicted their actions with uncanny accuracy. He was a chess master, always several moves ahead, always prepared to counter their every maneuver. He understood that the key to victory was not simply reacting to their actions, but proactively shaping the battlefield, dictating the terms of engagement. He used his vast resources to stifle competition, acquiring promising startups, and then either incorporating their technology into his own products or simply shutting them down to eliminate them as potential threats. He lobbied government officials to enact regulations that would favor his company and disadvantage his rivals. He was a master of the game, playing it with ruthless efficiency, always striving to maintain his dominant position. His reign was not without its detractors. Many criticized his unethical tactics, his disregard for the well-being of his employees, and his insatiable hunger for power. But he dismissed these criticisms as the complaints of envious rivals and disgruntled former employees. He was unconcerned with public opinion, convinced that his results spoke for themselves. He believed that the ends justified the means, that any action was permissible if it served to advance his goals. He saw himself as a disruptor, a revolutionary, an iconoclast who was destined to reshape the world. He was willing to sacrifice anything, including his own reputation, to achieve his vision. Ultimately, his story is a cautionary tale about the seductive nature of power and the corrosive effects of ambition. It is a reminder that the pursuit of success, when divorced from ethical considerations, can lead to a dangerous and destructive path. His legacy remains complex, a testament to the extraordinary heights that can be achieved through ruthless determination, but also a stark warning about the price that must be paid when morality is sacrificed on the altar of ambition. He exemplifies the principle that the darkness, while capable of breeding power, can also consume those who embrace it too readily. The trap springs from a fundamental miscalculation of risk, a failure to understand the delicate balance between ambition and overreach. It's a simple equation, really, one that the weak consistently fail to solve. They see the immediate gain, the quick advantage, the fleeting moment of dominance, and they lunge for it without considering the long-term consequences. They are like moths drawn to a flame, blinded by the allure of instant gratification, oblivious to the destructive power that awaits them. They imagine that they can control the chaos they unleash, that they can manipulate the forces of darkness without being consumed by them. But the darkness is a powerful and insidious force, and it rarely yields to those who underestimate its strength. The weak believe that they are cunning, that they are playing a sophisticated game of strategy, but in reality, they are merely pawns in a larger game, manipulated by forces they do not understand. They are easily predictable, their desires and weaknesses transparent to those who know how to read them. Their ambition blinds them to the obvious, making them vulnerable to exploitation and manipulation. The trap is also sprung by a profound lack of self-awareness, an inability to recognize one's own limitations and vulnerabilities. The weak are often driven by a deep-seated insecurity, a need to prove themselves to others. They seek validation through external achievements, through the acquisition of power and status, but this external validation is fleeting and unsatisfying, and it only serves to fuel their insecurities. They are constantly striving for more, never content with what they have. This relentless pursuit of external validation makes them vulnerable to manipulation. They are easily flattered and swayed by those who offer them praise and recognition. They are so desperate for approval that they are willing to compromise their values and principles in order to obtain it. They fail to understand that true strength comes from within, from a deep sense of self-worth and self-acceptance. They are forever chasing shadows, forever seeking validation from sources that can never truly satisfy them. Further contributing to the trap is the inability to cultivate genuine relationships, a tendency to view others as mere tools to be used and discarded. The weak surround themselves with sycophants and yes-men, people who will tell them what they want to hear, who will never challenge their authority. They fear dissent and criticism, and they actively suppress any opinions that differ from their own. They create an echo chamber around themselves, reinforcing their own biases and delusions. They isolate themselves from reality, becoming increasingly detached from the consequences of their actions. They fail to understand that true power comes from collaboration and cooperation, from building strong relationships based on mutual respect and trust. They alienate those who could have been their allies, leaving themselves vulnerable to attack from their enemies. They are ultimately alone, surrounded by people who are only interested in what they can get from them. The failure to adapt, the rigid adherence to outdated strategies and tactics, also contributes to the trap. The weak become complacent, believing that their past successes guarantee future victories. They resist change and innovation, clinging to the familiar and comfortable. They fail to recognize that the world is constantly evolving and that what worked yesterday may not work today. They become predictable and stagnant, easy targets for those who are more adaptable and agile. They are like dinosaurs unable to adjust to a changing climate, destined for extinction. They lack the intellectual curiosity and the willingness to learn from their mistakes. They are trapped in their own narrow perspectives, unable to see the bigger picture. They are ultimately victims of their own rigidity, their own unwillingness to adapt to the changing circumstances around them. This inflexibility dooms them, locking them into a path of inevitable decline. And finally, the most damning aspect of the trap, the absence of foresight. The weak are so focused on the immediate gratification of their desires that they fail to consider the long-term consequences of their actions. They are short-sighted and impulsive, acting without thinking, driven by instinct rather than reason. They are like gamblers who chase their losses, doubling down on bad bets, hoping to recoup their investments. They fail to understand that every action has a consequence, and that these consequences can often be unforeseen and unintended. They are ultimately undone by their own lack of planning and preparation. They are caught off guard by unexpected events, unable to react effectively to changing circumstances. They are victims of their own impulsivity, their own inability to think ahead. Their lack of foresight becomes their ultimate downfall, the final nail in their coffin. The Machiavellian approach to power recognizes these flaws, these vulnerabilities inherent in the weak. It understands that darkness, the willingness to confront uncomfortable truths and engage in actions others deem immoral, can be a potent source of power. It is not about reveling in cruelty for its own sake, but about a cold, calculated assessment of reality, unburdened by sentimentality or moral constraints. The Machiavellian strategist sees the world as it is, not as it should be, and leverages this understanding to achieve their objectives. This requires a certain detachment, an ability to distance oneself from the emotional turmoil that often clouds judgment. It demands a willingness to make difficult decisions, to sacrifice short-term gains for long-term advantages, and to exploit the weaknesses of others without hesitation. This is not to say that morality is irrelevant, but rather that it is a tool to be used strategically, a mask to be worn or discarded as the situation dictates. The Machiavellian understands that appearances matter, and that the perception of virtue can be just as effective as virtue itself. Therefore, they cultivate an image that serves their interests, whether it be that of a benevolent leader, a humble servant, or a ruthless tyrant. The key is to control the narrative, to shape the perceptions of others, and to use these perceptions to manipulate their actions. This requires a deep understanding of human psychology, an ability to anticipate the reactions of others, and a willingness to exploit their emotions and desires. The Machiavellian strategist also understands the importance of information. Knowledge is power, and the ability to gather and control information is essential for success. This means cultivating a network of informants, spies, and allies, and using them to gather intelligence on rivals and enemies. It also means controlling the flow of information, disseminating propaganda to shape public opinion, and suppressing dissenting voices that threaten the established order. The goal is to create an environment of uncertainty and confusion, where others are forced to rely on the information provided by the Machiavellian strategist. This allows them to control the narrative, to shape the perceptions of others, and to manipulate their actions. Deception is a key tool in the Machiavellian arsenal. The ability to lie convincingly, to misdirect attention, and to create false impressions is essential for success in the game of power. This does not mean that the Machiavellian is inherently dishonest, but rather that they are willing to use deception when it serves their interests. They understand that truth is subjective and that perception is reality. Therefore, they focus on shaping the perceptions of others, rather than adhering to some abstract notion of objective truth. This requires a certain level of cynicism, a willingness to question the motives of others, and a distrust of conventional wisdom. Furthermore, the Machiavellian approach emphasizes the importance of cultivating a reputation for both strength and ruthlessness. Fear is a powerful motivator, and the ability to inspire fear in others can be a significant advantage. This does not mean resorting to violence or intimidation indiscriminately, but rather demonstrating a willingness to use force when necessary and cultivating an image of being willing to do whatever it takes to achieve one's goals. However, strength alone is not enough. The Machiavellian strategist must also be perceived as intelligent and capable. They must be able to demonstrate their competence in a variety of fields and to solve problems effectively. This requires a constant pursuit of knowledge, a willingness to learn from one's mistakes, and an ability to adapt to changing circumstances. The goal is to create an image of being both powerful and competent, a force to be reckoned with. This will deter others from challenging one's authority and make them more likely to cooperate willingly. The Machiavellian understands the dynamics of power, the subtle interplay of fear, respect, and self-interest that drives human behavior. They use this understanding to manipulate others, to achieve their objectives, and to maintain their position of power. The cultivation of alliances is paramount. Even the most powerful individual cannot operate in complete isolation. Allies provide support, resources, and protection. The Machiavellian strategist carefully selects their allies, choosing those who are loyal, competent, and useful. They understand that alliances are transactional and that they must offer something in return for the support they receive. This could be anything from money and resources to protection and influence. The key is to maintain a balance of power within the alliance, to ensure that no single ally becomes too powerful or independent. This requires constant vigilance, a willingness to play allies against each other, and an ability to anticipate their actions. The Machiavellian strategist also understands that alliances are not permanent, and that they may need to be broken or renegotiated as circumstances change. They are willing to betray their allies if necessary, but only when the benefits outweigh the costs. Betrayal should be a last resort, as it can damage one's reputation and make it more difficult to form alliances in the future. The Machiavellian strategist approaches alliances with a cold, calculated rationality, prioritizing their own interests above all else. Finally, the Machiavellian strategy demands adaptability. The world is constantly changing, and the tactics that worked yesterday may not work today. The successful Machiavellian is able to adapt to new circumstances, to learn from their mistakes, and to adjust their strategy accordingly. This requires a flexible mindset, a willingness to experiment, and an ability to think outside the box. It also requires a constant monitoring of the environment, a careful observation of the actions of others, and a willingness to anticipate future trends. The Machiavellian strategist avoids becoming rigid or dogmatic and remains open to new ideas and approaches. They understand that the only constant is change, and that the ability to adapt is essential for survival in the game of power. This adaptability, coupled with a ruthless pragmatism and a deep understanding of human nature, is the essence of the Machiavellian approach to power. It is a strategy that has been used by leaders and influencers for centuries, and it remains relevant in today's complex and competitive world. History offers a chilling confirmation of these principles, echoing the strategies employed on the grandest stages of empire and warfare. Consider the rise and fall of the Roman Empire, a civilization built on military might and political maneuvering. The Romans were masters of alliance building, offering citizenship and protection to conquered peoples in exchange for loyalty and military service. This allowed them to expand their power and project their influence across vast territories. But these alliances were not based on sentimentality or shared values. They were calculated arrangements designed to serve Rome's strategic interests. When these interests changed, or when allies became too powerful, the Romans were not afraid to betray them. The Punic Wars, for example, saw Rome turn on its former Carthaginian allies, ultimately destroying their civilization in a brutal and protracted conflict. This ruthless pragmatism, this willingness to prioritize their own interests above all else, was a key factor in Rome's success. They understood that power was a zero-sum game, and that they needed to be willing to do whatever it took to maintain their dominance. The internal power struggles within the Roman Senate provide another example of Machiavellian principles in action. Senators competed fiercely for influence, forming and breaking alliances, using bribery and intimidation, and even resorting to assassination to achieve their goals. Figures like Julius Caesar and Augustus were masters of this game, skillfully manipulating their rivals and consolidating their power. They understood the importance of controlling the narrative, using propaganda to shape public opinion and to demonize their enemies. They were also adept at using fear as a tool, instilling a sense of insecurity in their opponents and forcing them to make concessions. The Roman Empire's history is replete with examples of leaders who understood the darker aspects of human nature, who were willing to exploit weaknesses and vulnerabilities, and who were not afraid to use deception and violence to achieve their aims. Their successes and failures serve as a stark reminder of the enduring relevance of Machiavellian principles in the pursuit of power. Military history provides further illustrations of the effectiveness of Machiavellian strategy. Throughout the ages, successful military leaders have understood the importance of deception, surprise, and the exploitation of weaknesses. Sun Tzu, in his Art of War, emphasized the importance of knowing your enemy and knowing yourself, of striking when your enemy is unprepared, and of avoiding direct confrontation when you are at a disadvantage. These principles are fundamentally Machiavellian, emphasizing the importance of cunning, strategy, and the ruthless pursuit of victory. Consider the example of Hannibal, the Carthaginian general who famously crossed the Alps and invaded Italy. Hannibal was a master of deception, using spies and scouts to gather intelligence about his enemies, and employing ambushes and feints to mislead them. He understood the importance of morale, both of his own troops and of his enemies. He sought to demoralize the Romans by inflicting a series of devastating defeats, hoping to break their will to fight. He also understood the importance of logistics, carefully planning his supply lines and ensuring that his troops were adequately fed and equipped. Hannibal's campaigns were a testament to the power of strategic thinking and the importance of understanding the psychology of warfare. His ability to outwit and outmaneuver his enemies, despite being outnumbered and outgunned, demonstrates the enduring relevance of Machiavellian principles in the realm of military strategy. Similar examples can be found throughout history, from the campaigns of Alexander the Great to the strategies employed by Napoleon Bonaparte. These leaders understood that war is not simply a matter of brute force, but a complex game of strategy, deception, and psychological warfare. They were willing to use any means necessary to achieve victory, including lying, cheating, and betraying their enemies. Their successes stand as a testament to the enduring power of Machiavellian principles in the pursuit of military dominance. The ability to adapt to changing circumstances, to exploit weaknesses, and to ruthlessly pursue one's objectives are essential qualities for any successful military leader. And these qualities are all hallmarks of the Machiavellian approach to power. The human mind, when confronted with darkness, often undergoes a profound transformation. Fear, insecurity, and the primal instinct for self-preservation become dominant forces. This heightened state of awareness, while unsettling, can also unlock latent potential. When stripped of the illusion of safety and confronted with genuine adversity, individuals are often compelled to access reserves of strength and ingenuity they never knew existed. This is not to romanticize suffering, but to acknowledge that hardship can be a catalyst for growth and adaptation. The individual forced to navigate treacherous terrain, both literally and figuratively, learns to anticipate threats, to strategize effectively, and to cultivate a ruthless pragmatism. In the realm of social dynamics, this translates to a heightened awareness of manipulation, deception, and power plays. The person who has experienced betrayal is less likely to be naive and more likely to discern ulterior motives. This acquired cynicism, while potentially isolating, can also serve as a shield against future exploitation. The darkness, therefore, can be a brutal teacher, imparting lessons in self-reliance, strategic thinking, and the art of psychological warfare. Moreover, the willingness to confront and embrace the darker aspects of human nature can provide a significant advantage in the pursuit of power. Many are repelled by the prospect of deception, manipulation, or even calculated ruthlessness. They cling to a moral code that, while admirable in principle, can be a liability in a world often governed by self-interest. The individual who is willing to venture into morally ambiguous territory, to consider tactics that others deem unacceptable, gains access to a wider range of strategic options. This is not to suggest that morality is irrelevant, but rather that a rigid adherence to ethical principles can be exploited by those who are less scrupulous. The Machiavellian perspective acknowledges the existence of darkness and seeks to understand its dynamics, not to endorse it, but to master it. By studying the techniques of manipulation, coercion, and deception, one can become better equipped to defend against them, and, when necessary, to deploy them strategically. This understanding of the shadow side of human behavior is a critical component of effective leadership and strategic thinking. Furthermore, darkness breeds power by forcing individuals to confront their own vulnerabilities. The willingness to acknowledge and accept one's flaws, insecurities, and limitations is essential for personal growth and self-mastery. Those who are unwilling to confront their inner demons are often controlled by them, acting out of fear, insecurity, or a need for validation. The individual who has undergone a process of self-exploration and self-acceptance is less susceptible to manipulation and better equipped to make rational decisions under pressure. This self-awareness is a source of inner strength that cannot be easily broken. It allows one to maintain composure in the face of adversity, to adapt to changing circumstances, and to make difficult choices without being paralyzed by fear or self-doubt. This inner resilience is a critical asset in the pursuit of power, as it enables one to withstand pressure, to persevere through setbacks, and to maintain a clear focus on one's objectives. The journey into darkness, therefore, can be a journey of self-discovery and self-empowerment, leading to a deeper understanding of oneself and one's place in the world. The power that emerges from darkness is not simply about domination or control over others. It is also about self-mastery, resilience, and the ability to navigate complex and challenging situations. The individual who has confronted their own inner darkness and emerged stronger is better equipped to lead, to inspire, and to create lasting impact. This type of power is not based on brute force or manipulation, but on a deep understanding of human nature and the ability to connect with others on a profound level. It is the power of authenticity, integrity, and an unwavering commitment to one's values. While the path to this type of power may be fraught with challenges and setbacks, The rewards are immeasurable. It is a power that is both sustainable and transformative, capable of shaping not only one's own life, but also the lives of others. The darkness, therefore, is not an end in itself, but a crucible in which true power is forged. The true seeker of power understands that the conventional morality often celebrated is a carefully constructed fiction, a tool used to manage the masses and maintain the status quo. By venturing beyond these artificial boundaries, one gains a more realistic perspective on the world and the motivations of others. This is not to advocate for nihilism or moral bankruptcy.